Can you believe that potatoes can grow on a roadside with cars constantly passing by? Hello everyone, I'm Rowan, and today my workplace is on the side of a road. It's this narrow roadbed, about 50 meters long. Let's begin today's work. This is the potato. First, we need to remove the stems and leaves from the potato field. Some potatoes might come up with them in the process. After removing the potatoes, the stems and leaves are useless. Because these are ordinary potatoes that haven't been cultivated and have grown in harsh conditions, the potatoes aren't very big. Honestly, this kind of harvesting work is really therapeutic. You don't have to think about anything, just simple, repetitive work. Occasionally, a truck will pass by, providing some background noise, haha. With each step you take, you get more potatoes. Of course, it would be even better if the sun were a little less intense. If you were offered this job, what hourly wage would you be willing to do it? Compared to mechanized farms, the potato yield from this roadside crop is pitifully low. However, many potatoes are still buried in the soil. My mother-in-law was digging up the potatoes still in the ground, and she unearthed this many. My mother-in-law told me it was because this was a piece of land without an owner. It used to be overgrown with weeds, and she was the one who weeded and fertilized it, transforming it into a place where crops could be grown. However, because it grew by the roadside, many strangers would steal the crops when they ripened. The diligence of elderly Chinese people is undeniable, but it's also undeniable that many Chinese people lack manners. The Chinese have a truly deep-seated passion for agriculture. What other ethnic group would go to such lengths to cultivate crops? I've heard that in some places, planting crops without permission is illegal. I imagine that Chinese people who love gardening would feel very uncomfortable living in such countries. To be honest, this is the first time I've seen potatoes turn red. I initially thought they were radishes. I wonder if these potatoes will taste strange. Who would have thought that potatoes would grow in such an ordinary piece of land? My mother-in-law seems to be digging potatoes very easily, so I'll give it a try too. Digging potatoes looks easy, but it actually requires wielding a heavy hoe and carefully controlling the force applied. Too much force will damage the potato. Bending over and repeating this action under the sun is exhausting. For me, this was just a day of experiencing life. But for older people like my mother-in-law, this is their daily work. They are willing to work under the scorching sun and in the pouring rain for a good harvest. I was tired, so my mother continued digging potatoes. Perhaps you're curious about what else my mother planted in this barren soil. Let me tell you. First of all, this is a mustard plant. This is what it looks like when it matures. As it continues to grow, it will flower and bear fruit, and one mustard plant will have this many seeds. This is a radish. Similarly, one radish plant yields many seeds.
这些是萝卜籽，
They pull them out of the soil and dry them in the summer sun.
夏天把它晒干，
In autumn, the radishes are planted,
秋天就可以播种了，等到冬天就可以吃萝卜了。
and in winter, we can enjoy radish soup. These radishes have been in the ground for too long and don't taste good anymore.
这个有车种懂吗？那个？啊？这个毛毛海菜。
This is the amaranth my mother planted a while
各
ago.
种的海菜。
This is what it looks like when it's ripe.
哦，红海菜。这个是黄瓜啊，
Here are cucumbers.
黄瓜这些会这样沿上去，沿上这个棚。
A trellis made of thin bamboo helps the cucumbers climb and grow. In less than a month, we can start harvesting the cucumbers. We can pick cucumbers every day. The fruiting period lasts for 2 months. These are edamame.
毛豆。种的毛豆。
Tender edamame can be steamed and eaten directly. When edamame is fully mature, it becomes soybeans. Soybeans can be used to make soy milk, tofu, bean curd sheets,
毛豆要好
and
多
can
好
be
晒
said。to be an indispensable food ingredient on the Chinese dining table.
再过1个多月，毛豆就可以成熟了。
This edamame will be ready for harvest in another month. This is a wheat field. However, this isn't my mother's land. This land currently belongs to the state. The area where I lie now is currently undergoing a program to convert tourists back to farmland.
这是小麦，种出来的小麦。等到秋后就可以去来收割了。中国人的粮食。
Underneath these little tents, sweet potatoes are planted. Are you curious about how sweet potatoes are grown? I happen to participate in the process, so let me show you. First, we need to loosen the soil. This soil is very barren. Hoeing might hit hard rocks. Actually, I'm very curious. Can sweet potatoes really grow in this kind of soil? This is what it looks like afterward. Next, dig a trench in the soft soil to plant sweet potatoes.
开始挖沟槽，开始种番薯苗。
The sweet potato seedlings can be bought from the market. This is what my mother bought. To improve the survival rate, she soaked them in water. Then, we dig a hole, put the roots of the sweet potato seedlings into the hole, and press them down firmly.
搿轻了动就好，这些任务你要给了，
给了，给干么好的？
搞好的呀。
After planting, we need to water them. Now we're going to the river to fetch water.
水池里面。
China's rivers are quite polluted due to industrialization. Although efforts to clean them up began 10 years ago, with heavily polluting factories being shut down, the river water still hasn't returned to the clear, swim-worthy state it was in the last century. However, it's still sufficient for irrigation.
哦，倒掉。哪里？
这里。
太
My
重了。
mother-in-law's mode of transportation is really versatile. Haha. This kind of electric scooter only costs $350 and can last for about 3 years even with daily use. Can you imagine planting them like this? My mother-in-law also planted eggplants, which survived in this barren soil.
太牛了，马路边种菜都能存活。
Okay, back to the main point. After 2 hours of digging, all the potatoes were dug up. This is the total yield. In the Chinese vegetable wholesale market, 15 kilograms of potatoes only costs 50 renminbi, which is about $7. This means that my mother's bucket of potatoes was only worth $3 to $4. yet she put in many days of effort. Thinking about this really makes me sad. Okay, that's all for today's video. If you want to know more about the real China, follow me, and I'll film for you.